And now let us move to question number 11. Nick. Erin shouted at the top of her lungs as she bounded through the meadow. Come back, Nick. She was nearly out of the breath, but she kept running through the tall grass. Nick, come on, boy, it is time to go home. Erwin continued shouting, her voice hoarse from shouting similar expressions all day. Then she stumbled over the leash that she was carrying. Whoa, come on, Nick, Erwin shouted, regaining her balance. Who is Nico? Is it son of Erwin, or brother of Erwin, or father of Erwin, or nephew of Erwin, or it cannot be determined? So, from the given options, the relationship between the two cannot be determined because there is no specific mention of it in the passage. Now, let us move to question number 12. Arg! Amber exclaimed as she pulled off her sweater and threw it into a multicolored pile of cloths. She walked into her closet and swept her hand recklessly through the rows of hanging garments, her face reflecting her dissatisfaction. She huffed and grabbed a silver dress. She held it up on the mirror against her body for a moment, sighed, and then stepped into the dress. She gazed into the mirror and then scowled and threw her fist down in disappointment. She heard her mother's voice through the door. Amber, Scott is here. Are you almost ready? Amber groaned. Okay, just tell him I shall be down in 2 minutes. She slid the silver dress back off and threw it onto the ever growing multicolored pile of cloths. Will Amber be ready to meet Scott in 2 minutes? Why or why not? So, what can we infer? Might be, as she is very much confused while selecting the dress because Scott is almost here already. Now, let us move to question number 13. Ryan was looking forward to sleeping over at his friend Robert's house. Though they had been classmates for a while, the two had only recently become good friends. Ryan packed up his sleeping bag, a pillow, and a few of his favorite toys and games, and then his mom dropped him off at Robert's. Robert met Ryan on the porch, and the two did their secret handshake and started playing right away. First, they played pirates in Robert's tree fort. Next, they played ninjas in the driveway. Then it started getting dark and they went inside of Robert's house. As soon as they walked in the house, Ryan's eyes started getting red and itchy. He saw a big orange cat sitting on the couch. Then he started sneezing uncontrollably. I am sorry, Robert. It has been a lot of fun, but I have to call my mom. Why Ryan wanted to call his mom? Is it due to Ryan is jealous of his friend's beautiful house, thus making excuses not to stay? Or Ryan is making excuses just because he has changed his mind and decided not to stay? Or Ryan is allergic to cats? Or Ryan is scared of staying in a house which is situated in the middle of a jungle? Or none of these? So, from the given options, it seems Ryan is allergic to cats because as soon as Ryan saw the cat, he started sneezing. Now, let us move to question number 14. Mr. Thomas sat on the front porch of his house in a bathrobe and bunny slippers with his head in his hands. He was holding the daily newspaper. The sun shined brightly in the sky. His neighbors were coming out of their houses and getting in their cars. Mr. Thomas sighed. His neighbor, Mr. Rosencrantz, stepped out on his porch and saw Mr. Thomas. Did it again who? Said Mr. Rosencrantz. Mr. Thomas replied, yeah. Mr. Rosencrantz chuckled and said, here, Mr. Thomas, you can use my cell phone. I could even keep a key over here if you wanted. Tom thankfully grabbed the cell phone and called his wife. Honey, I did it again. Mr. Rosencrantz heard Mrs. Thomas yelling at Mr. Thomas in a distorted, high-pitched squeal. Yes, dear, I am so sorry. I shall see you soon. Mr. Thomas returned the phone, sighed deeply, and ran his fingers through his hair. What is the thing that Mr. Thomas did again? Is it Mr. Thomas forgot to take his wife with him after returning from office? Or Mr. Thomas either locked himself out of the house or lost the keys? Or Mr. Thomas had spoiled all the food? Or Thomas forgot to buy a gift for his wife? That is why she had made him out of the house? Or Mr. Thomas had chronic short-term memory loss and had habit of locking himself out of the house every time? So from the given statement, it can be inferred that Thomas either locked himself out of the house or lost the keys, at the phrase. I did again reflects it. So the option could be option B or option 2. Now let us move to question number 15. Mr. Erickson was a manager at a small insurance company in Minnesota. One cold winter day, April, Mackenzie, one of his employees, approached him about some time off from work. This job is very important to me, Mr. Erickson, but I have been called into jury duty. When my government asks for my help, I have to answer the call. Mr. Erickson rubbed his forehead. We really need you here, April, but the government needs you more. Take the time. We will be all right. Mr. Erickson had thought that they needed her there at the office, but they managed fine without her. When April returned a week later, Mr. Erickson noticed that most of her skin was bright shade of red except for around her eyes. Pale white circles ran from the top of her eyebrows to the bottom of her cheeks. These pale circles were surrounded by sunburned flesh. That is when Mr. Erickson knew. April, step into my office. There are some things we need to discuss, Mr. Erickson said ominously. What does Mr. Erickson want to talk about with April? Is it Mr. Erickson wanted to talk to the April about what happened to the jury date that made her eyes like pale white, or Mr. Erickson wanted to fire her from job, or Mr. Erickson wanted to take her to the doctor, or Mr. Erickson wanted to send her for a leave, or both A and D? So the right choice of inference for question number 15 could be Erickson wanted to talk to the April about what happened to the jury date that made her eyes like pale white, as when she came back from the jury, the most of her skin was bright shade of red except for round her eyes. Pale white circles ran from the top of her eyebrows to the bottom of her cheeks, and these pale circles were surrounded by sunburned flesh.